Hi everybody, welcome back. This lesson is on how to change guitar strings. Very, obviously a very important thing to know. So I'm going to show us all how to change our D string, which is going to be this string right here. So the first thing you want to do is get your strings. I use these Diodario's. My favorite are DRs, but they're quite a bit more expensive. And I'm poor, so I use Diodario's, and I've already changed a few, working my way up to the D. But at least with Diodario's, they actually color code the ball tips of the strings, which is very cool. So the D string, our fourth string, is black, so I'm going to make sure of that before I do anything else, that I have the right string, because it's very easy to get the thicknesses. If you eyeball them, it's easy to get off, and you can actually, thread the wrong string on. And once you put it on, you've kinked the string, and if you have to take it off, you have to actually use an entirely new string. And nobody wants to be out a string set just from ruining one string. So anyway, here's your string. But before we put this on, I'm going to show you how to take off the old string. So you're going to want to get something like this. This is actually made by Planet Waves. You can use a pair of pliers as well, but I like this because it has all the little guitar tools in one thing. It has a little string winder here, and it's a string cutter right here. So anyway, the first thing you want to do is take your string, in this case the fourth string, and loosen the tension. So when you cut it, it doesn't snap and hit you in the face or anything. So step one, take your string, just cut it wherever you want, somewhere in the middle. And and actually, this is why I like this so much, is this the Planet Waves thing at the very end of, I know you can't really see it in the camera, but at the very end of the string winder there is kind of a little dip, and what that's for is for the pegs of your bridge. And if you take it and you go from the outside in, you can actually scoop underneath and pull out the bridge pin. And to be honest, I'm not sure if they're all exactly the same size or not. I have encountered guitars where maybe just due to wear and excessive use and things, is that some of the pegs are actually different thicknesses for the different holes. And you want to make sure that you always put the same peg back in the same hole so it's a snug fit. And you should only be changing strings once at a time too, because if you change more than one string at a time, you're going to change the tension on the neck, and the neck can actually bend out of shape and things like that, and you might ruin the setup you have on your guitar. So unless you, for some reason, really need to work on your guitar or clean the fretboard, it's always good to change one string at a time. So anyway, taking out the bridge peg and putting it aside in a safe spot, I pull out this half, and you can actually see the same color of the ball tip, which is handy. And there's a little kink in the string, which I'll talk about shortly. But so you want to take these and you want to make sure you keep them in a safe spot where no house pets will chew on them. I know I have a cat and she loves to play with the strings. So if they chew on them, which they love to do, it can actually poke through their jaw and things like that. So you want to make sure that you put it somewhere safe. So I throw mine on the floor, of course, but I've gotten pretty good at keeping them in a pile. Anyway, point is, you want to keep them all in the exact same spot and pick them up immediately. And so I'm going to undo the string on the other end here. So I'm just kind of unwinding it here, and you want to be careful actually as you pull it off here, because it does have a tendency, because it was coiled very tightly, to snap. And I've actually cut my finger trying to unwind it this way and having it snap out, and the tip actually going into my thumb. So not fun either. Now what I recommend doing with these is kind of this thing where you curl them up, sort of how, you don't have to do it as much, but kind of like it was when it came out of the pack. So it's easier to see, and it's easier to throw in the trash because they don't just kind of fly everywhere. So anyway, now that we have our string off, take our fresh D string, And you want to be careful when you unwind this too, because it's kind of easy to get it rewound the wrong way, like this. See how it's still kind of... so you just don't want to put any kinks in the string. If you put any kinks in the string, it's going to affect the way the string rings, and you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot right away. So the first thing, now that the string is unwound, is you want to put a small kink in the string yourself. I kind of do it. I know that this is a little difficult to see, but I have it about, I don't know my degrees, but not a 90-degree angle, but you know, around 70 degrees, I guess. So yeah, I don't know if you could see that. Probably not. But the point is you want to put a little kink in the string, and you do it right after the winding stops. So the way that the string is made is that you have winding that goes around the little ball, and then it's wrapped back around. In other words, the inner wires thread around the ball, and then the outer wire, the gold wire, is wrapped around that. So right after the point where the string just starts to become, it's one solid piece, that's where you want to put the kink. So it's usually about a 1/2 inch. It kind of depends. The thinner the strings get, the closer it is. I usually actually always do about a 1/2 inch or so. And the reason for that is, as you put this into the bridge, when you put your bridge peg back on there, the string won't directly pull up into the peg, because if you don't put that kink, it'll pull into the peg and it'll actually pop the peg out when you try to tighten the string. So you want to have that much of an angle, and then actually put it into the guitar and take the bridge peg, and as you look at your peg closely, you're going to notice that there's a little groove in the peg, and that groove is where the string goes, and that allows the peg to stay flush with the guitar bridge. So I'm putting my peg in here, and you want to make sure that you push the string in farther than you put the peg in. And then, I don't know if you can hear that, but you hear a few clicks. That's the peg getting nice and tight against the wood, but the string is still free to move. The string moves a little bit. So you want to pull the string with your finger and just pull it up until it feels like it's kind of snug. And that means, well, it should be nice and snug against the peg, but the ball isn't going to be pushing up against the bottom of the peg, so it won't pop the peg out. So then you take your string and you come all the way over to the other side, and I'm going to cut to a close-up here in just a moment for the rest of this. But what you want to try and do is I line the tuning key, I line it up so the hole is in the same path as the string. And so as I feed this through, be careful not to poke yourself, you should get a nice straight line from the string across the nut, and then as you hold this, you'll notice that, hopefully, that there's a nice clean path this way. So the string, as it's hanging out over the tuner, it's not at an angle like this or like this. So just a nice clean angle. So I'm going to go to a close-up now and show you how to wind it around the tuning key. So here we go. Now, one final thing that I should have mentioned earlier in the video, my apologies, is especially with these guitars, but it's just a general rule with all guitars, is you always thread the string on the side that's inwards of the headstock. So for instance, that fourth string, and you'll see it in the close-up, is that all the strings are on the inside of the peg head, and that's very important. You don't want to thread your string on the outside this way. You always want to thread it to where it's on the inside this way. So these three, they're going to be on this side of the peg head, and then these three will be on this side of the peg head. That's really important. Welcome back. We have our close-up. Hopefully this will be good enough for you guys to see. So what we have is the string. This is our D string right here, and like I was saying before, the tuning key is actually nice and straight, so the string can flow freely through it. Now the first thing you want to do once the bridge peg is nice and tight and you're confident that you've pulled the string up to the top of the underside of the bridge peg, in other words there's no excess string that will slip through as we start to tighten it, and the string is threaded here oh, you can't see, but it's threaded through the nut. It's just sitting there nicely on the nut. Is you want to take and you want to reach with your finger and actually just lightly grab and pull back about 2 inches of the string. So about that much. So this is the string, oops, this is the string right here, if it was nice and tight. So you just want to grab and pull back about 2 inches. Now once you've done that, and this is where it gets kind of tricky and it just comes from experience, is I take my string winder and I put it here, and you want to start to twist. And so usually the idea though is to not let any more string come back through or slip out of this thing. So so you start winding here, and so I'm kind of pinching with my thumb and my middle finger here, and I'm using my first finger to make sure that this loop that's about to form isn't going to flip over the top this way. So I'm resting here on the body of the head, the top of the headstock here, and my first finger is kind of babysitting, so to speak. And then you take it, and don't worry about the excess, don't worry about if it's still sitting in the nut of the guitar or not. Just control the amount of string you have in your hand. So don't let it slip through your fingers too much. So what I'm doing here is the very first wind, and this is really important. See the loop, actually the loop is just trying to flip over. So the very first wind, this excess, this being the excess here, this excess needs to go underneath. So this loop goes right on top. It's a little bit harder now that I'm doing it with the guitar on the table here. So you want to thread it to where that goes underneath. So, and I've created now a very snug little loop that can't slip out. So I don't know, yeah, that should look pretty good for you. So as I keep winding, all the other winds, this excess goes on top. So on top. And as you wind, make sure that you allow every continuous wind, every other wind, to continue to be on the bottom. And as you start to get the string and it gets a little stiff, then you want to take it and actually make sure it sits inside the slot of the nut. So there we go. Very loose. So don't over tighten it yet. Now the idea is this, is you should have 2 to 3 winds that are underneath the string, the excess of the string, and that initial first wind that is on top of the string. And so what happens is as you tune your guitar up to pitch, it's going to compress and squeeze that excess part of the string into a nice little sandwich and make it to where it's not going to slip out. It's going to lock itself. So, and actually I probably could have wound it a little bit better. As far as like maybe an extra third wind. Usually 3 winds is best, but you get the idea. So I'm going to take this now. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut, I leave about, I don't know what that is, a couple millimeters of the string. And you don't want to cut it right up in there just in case, but just a couple of them. If you're careful, you can actually bend this down so you don't poke yourself. And now that we've successfully wrapped it around the peg head, I'm going to go back and show you how to stretch the strings in. Okay, so once we have threaded the string correctly around the peg head, we need to do what's called stretching the strings in. So the way that we do this is we get a tuner. I'm going to use my little handheld tuner. And we take our string, and you see what pitch it's at. So this should be a D pitch. And always have your tuner on guitar, not bass. Whoops. So here we go again. edited out in post, of course, is that we get our string up to pitch, approximately. And once it's in pitch, here's how we stretch it in. You want to take, it's kind of a gray area, but I use 3 fingers. I don't use my pinky so much, but I use my first, my middle, and my third on the strumming hand with my thumb, and I take it and I grab the string in the middle somewhere, and don't pull yet, just get your fingers underneath it. And you want to find a way to get your inner elbow to where you're right in front of the bridge. So, and the reason for this is you're going to pull upwards on the string, and you don't want to pull the string so hard you pop the entire bridge peg out. If you do that, then you're kind of screwed. There's no way to really go back and get it in there without loosening the string up here. It's just a big hassle. So anyway, you want to get right underneath and position it to where your inner elbow is right in front of the bridge, and then you take this hand and you put it on the same string in front of the nut. So you're going to pull up moderately hard, but you also want to push in with your elbow to where you're sort of countering the pressure. Now you don't have to push really hard. You'll start to get a feel of what the right amount of pressure is. But I am pulling pretty hard. My left hand and my elbow are just kind of guiding the string and controlling the whole thing. So I'm just pulling from the center like that. And that dropped about a little over a half step. So by doing this, you can do this several times on the string. You're actually saving the string itself from getting out of tune as you play. You're helping it kind of stretch in. You're helping the string get nice and tight around the peg head here. You don't want to do too much, of course. You don't want this string to start getting dead or anything, but I usually do it about two times now that I'm comfortable. The first time is always the big one. The second time's kind of just enough to equalize it. And your strings will still need to be tuned, of course. They are new strings, but it helps. It helps shave off a lot of time from the whole process, especially when you do all of your strings and you go through. You want all of your strings to more or less be in tune by the time you get to the top. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was a helpful tutorial, and I will see you guys soon, so take it easy.